The stars looked different through the viewport of the frontier. Captain Jake Morrison stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the swirling colors of faster-than-light travel paint, streaks across the darkness. It was 2187, and humanity had finally broken free from their solar system. The new drive technology had taken them further than any human had ever gone. And today they would meet their first alien civilization. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," said Lieutenant Maya Collins from her station. Her fingers moved quickly across the holographic display, translating the incoming signal. "It's not in any language we know, but the computer is working on it." Jake nodded. "Put it through when you have something." The frontier dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and suddenly the viewport filled with an impossible sight. A massive station hung in space, so large it could have held Earth's moon inside it. Ships of every conceivable shape surrounded it, some sleek and elegant, others angular and brutal. Lights dotted the station's surface like a city at night. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Chris Parker, the ship's security chief. "How many species do you think built that?" Before anyone could answer, the translation came through. A deep voice filled the bridge, speaking perfect English with a strange echo. "Human vessel Frontier, you are in the presence of the Galactic Council. Reduce your speed and follow the marked approach vector. Any deviation will be considered hostile." Jake looked at his crew. They had prepared for this moment, running scenarios and simulations, but nothing could truly prepare someone for first contact. "Follow their instructions. Weapons offline, shields down. Let's show them we come in peace." The Frontier moved slowly toward the massive station. As they drew closer, Jake could see other ships watching them, their sensors no doubt recording every detail of the human vessel. The station's docking bay opened like a great metal mouth, swallowing their ship into its interior. The docking process took an hour. When it was complete, Jake selected a team to accompany him. Maya Collins, Chris Parker, and Dr. Aaron Blake, their xenobiologist. Aaron was a thin man with glasses who spent most of his time in the lab, but Jake knew he had a sharp mind and calm demeanor that would serve them well. They stepped through the airlock into a corridor that seemed to stretch forever. The walls were made of a material that shifted colors as they walked. At the end of the corridor, massive doors opened into a chamber so vast it had its own weather system. Clouds drifted near the ceiling, hundreds of meters above their heads. The chamber was filled with aliens. Jake counted at least 30 different species in the immediate area. Some walked on two legs like humans, others on 4 or 6. Some floated without any visible means of support. One creature appeared to be made entirely of crystalline structures that refracted light into rainbows. At the center of the chamber stood a raised platform, and on that platform sat representatives of what Jake assumed were the most powerful species in the council. One being stood above the rest, a creature that resembled an upright reptile covered in dark scales. It wore armor that seemed to be made of living metal, shifting and adjusting with each movement. "Humans," the creature's voice boomed across the chamber. "I am Kalth, Supreme Commander of the Council's military forces. We have studied your transmissions, learned your languages, and examined your history. You are a violent species. You wage war upon yourselves with disturbing frequency. Yet you have also shown capability for rapid advancement. This presents the Council with a difficult question." Jake stepped forward. "We come seeking peaceful relations and mutual understanding. Humanity has fought wars, yes, but we've also built civilizations, created art, and reached for the stars. We want to learn from you and share what we know." Kalth's eyes, dark and unreadable, fixed on Jake. Noble words, but the Council has learned that words mean little. Actions reveal truth. Therefore, we offer you a challenge. If you succeed, humanity will be welcomed into the galactic community with full rights and access to our technology. If you fail, your species will be confined to your solar system for 1,000 of your years. The human team exchanged glances. Maya spoke up. "What kind of challenge?" "Combat," Kalth said simply. "Your greatest warriors against our Nexar, the champion guard of the Council. 5 matches. You must win all 5. Aaron adjusted his glasses nervously. "And if we refuse the challenge? Then you will be quarantined immediately. You came seeking contact with us. We are offering it on our terms. These terms have been standard for 10,000 years. Every species that has joined the Council has faced this challenge." Chris crossed his arms. "How many have succeeded?" For the first time, something like amusement crossed Kalth's face. "None. The Nexar have never been defeated. They are selected from the strongest warrior species in the galaxy, enhanced with technology and trained for centuries. But we are not unreasonable. We give every species the chance to prove themselves. Jake felt his jaw tighten. This was a test designed for them to fail, a way to justify humanity's isolation without making the Council look cruel. But refusing would achieve the same result. We accept. Excellent, Kalth said. You may select 5 champions from your species. You have 1 week to bring them here. The challenge will take place on Terminus Station, where all such trials are conducted. The galaxy will watch. Choose wisely, Captain Morrison. The meeting ended and the human team returned to their ship in silence. Once the airlock sealed behind them, Chris let out a long breath. That was a setup. They want us to fail. Of course they do, Maya said. We're unknowns. We scare them because they can't predict us. This challenge lets them contain us while maintaining their image as fair arbiters. Aaron sat down heavily. The Nexar have never been defeated. We're not just facing skilled fighters. We're facing centuries-old warriors with alien biology and technology we don't understand. Jake looked at his crew. Then we need to think differently. We need champions who can adapt, who can face the unknown and find a way through it. Not just our strongest fighters, but our smartest, our most creative, our most stubborn. Maya straightened. I volunteer. Chris nodded. I'm in. Aaron surprised them all. I'll go too. I know alien biology. Maybe that gives us an edge, Jake smiled. We need 2 more. And we need to prepare like we've never prepared before. The Frontier sent a message back to Earth, encrypted and marked urgent. Within days, 2 more volunteers arrived on a fast courier ship. Commander Lisa Grant, a pilot whose reflexes had been tested at the absolute peak of human capability, and Corporal Danny Hughes, a young Marine who had survived situations that should have killed him 3 times over. Danny was only 23, but he had something the others recognized immediately: an absolute refusal to quit. They spent the week training, studying footage of alien species the Council had provided, learning each other's strengths and weaknesses. Maya coordinated their strategies. Chris drilled them on combat techniques. Aaron taught them about alien physiology, where to look for weaknesses, how different species might move and think. Lisa improved their speed and reaction times. And Danny, the youngest, watched and learned from them all. On the 7th day, they traveled to Terminus Station. The arena was ancient, carved from a massive asteroid and equipped with technology that could simulate any environment. Thousands of aliens filled the viewing areas, and millions more watched through broadcasts across the galaxy. The humans walked into the arena floor, and for the first time, they saw their opponents. 5 Nexar warriors stood waiting, each one a nightmare made flesh. They were huge, armored, armed with weapons that hummed with power. They moved with the confidence of beings who had never known defeat. Jake watched from the observation area as his champions lined up. He had done everything he could to prepare them. Now it was up to them to prove that humanity deserved a place among the stars. Kalth's voice echoed through the arena. Let the challenge begin. First match, Chris Parker of humanity versus Thok of the Nexar. The massive alien stepped forward and Chris walked out to meet him. The crowd settled into expectant silence. This was a show they had seen many times before. The human would fight bravely and then the Nexar would crush him. It always ended the same way. But as Chris studied his opponent as he shifted his weight and calculated angles, something occurred to him. The Nexar had never faced defeat because every species they fought tried to match their strength. What if instead humanity did what humans did best? What if they adapted? The match began and Chris moved. Thok charged forward with terrifying speed. The Nexar warrior stood nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms ending in clawed hands and an armored exoskeleton that looked like it could stop bullets. The crowd leaned forward in anticipation, waiting for the inevitable moment when the human would be torn apart. Chris dove to the side, rolling across the arena floor. Thok's massive fist crashed into the ground where he had been standing, leaving a crater in the reinforced surface. The alien was strong, incredibly strong, but Chris had noticed something in those first seconds. Thok moved like a creature that had never needed to worry about defense. Every attack was committed full force with no concern for counterattack. The human stayed low, moving constantly, forcing Thok to chase him. The Nexar warrior grew frustrated, attacking with increasing aggression. Chris watched the pattern, memorizing how Thok shifted his weight before each strike. 4 arms meant more weapons, but it also meant a more complex center of gravity. 3 minutes into the fight, Chris saw his opening. Thok committed to a downward strike with all 4 arms, putting his full weight into the attack. Chris slipped inside the attack radius and struck at the Nexar's forward leg, not with his full strength but with precise timing. Thok's balance shifted. The massive warrior stumbled. Chris pressed his advantage, using Thok's own momentum against him. The Nexar tried to recover, but Chris was already moving, striking at joints and weak points that Aaron had identified in their training sessions. The crowd began to murmur, uncertain. This was not going as expected. 8 minutes later, Thok was down, one leg bent at an angle that made it unable to support the Nexar's weight. The referee, a council official, declared Chris the winner. The arena fell silent. Then confused muttering spread through the alien spectators. Kalth stood from his seat, his scaled face unreadable. "A lucky victory," he announced. "The next match will proceed." Lisa Grant stepped onto the arena floor. Her opponent was different from Thok, smaller and more lithe, with skin that shimmered with bioelectric patterns. Aaron had warned them about this species. They could read movement intentions through electromagnetic fields, predicting their opponent's actions before they happened. It was like fighting someone who could see the future. The match began, and immediately Lisa understood the problem. Every time she prepared to move, her opponent was already reacting. Every feint, every attack was countered before it fully developed. The Nexar warrior, called Sin, moved with impossible precision, always one step ahead. Lisa took hits, hard ones, and the crowd began to relax. This was more like what they expected. The human was outmatched, struggling against superior alien abilities. Kalth leaned back in his seat, satisfied that order was being restored. But Lisa was learning. She noticed that Sin's predictions were based on patterns, on the way organic beings naturally moved. The alien read electrical impulses and muscles, the slight preparations the body made before conscious action. So Lisa did something that went against every instinct. She stopped planning her movements. She began moving randomly, making decisions only at the last possible instant, sometimes making choices that hurt her own position. She attacked in ways that made no tactical sense, left openings that should have been protected, moved when she should have stayed still. It was chaos, and it was impossible to predict because Lisa herself didn't know what she would do next. Sin's confidence wavered. The electromagnetic readings were giving contradictory information. The human's movements became erratic, unpredictable, illogical. For a being who had spent centuries perfecting the art of prediction, fighting Lisa was like trying to catch smoke. 12 minutes into the match, Sin made a critical error, committing to a counterattack against a move that Lisa changed at the last instant. Lisa's elbow caught the Nexar warrior in what Aaron had identified as a neural cluster. Sin dropped unconscious before hitting the ground. 2 victories. The crowd was no longer murmuring. They were shouting, some in excitement, others in concern. The alien dignitaries in the observation boxes exchanged worried glances. This was not supposed to happen. The Nexar were the best. They had defended the council's honor for millennia. Kalth called for a recess, and the council convened in private. Jake watched through the observation window as his champions gathered together, exhausted but energized. Maya was explaining something to the others, gesturing animatedly. Chris was flexing his hands, checking for injuries. Aaron was taking notes, always the scientist, documenting everything for analysis. The recess lasted 30 minutes. When it ended, Kalth's announcement carried an edge of tension. The challenge continues. Aaron Blake of Humanity versus Core of the Nexar. Aaron walked onto the arena floor, adjusting his glasses out of habit. His opponent was terrifying, a massive creature covered in articulated armor plates with multiple eyes that could track movement in all directions. Core had a reputation, even among the Nexar. He was a tactical genius who had studied warfare across dozens of species. He knew human military history better than most humans did. The match began, and Core demonstrated his knowledge immediately. Every technique Aaron tried, every strategy was countered perfectly. Core had studied footage of human martial arts, human military tactics, human behavioral patterns. He had prepared for this fight more thoroughly than any opponent Aaron had ever faced. Aaron found himself being systematically dismantled. Core was patient, methodical, showing Aaron that every option had been considered and countered. It was like playing chess against a computer that had already calculated every possible game. The crowd settled back, relieved. This was the demonstration of Nexar superiority they had been waiting for. 5 minutes in, Aaron was bleeding from a cut above his eye, breathing hard, clearly losing. Jake gripped the railing of the observation box, watching helplessly. Chris and Lisa looked worried. Maya studied Aaron intently, trying to understand what he was thinking. Then Aaron did something completely insane. He dropped his defensive stance entirely and charged straight at Core, leaving himself open to a dozen devastating counterattacks. It was suicide, a move that made no tactical sense whatsoever. Every calculation, every strategy, every logical analysis said it would fail. Core hesitated for a fraction of a second, unable to believe his opponent would do something so monumentally stupid. In that fraction of a second, Aaron's fist connected with Core's primary sensor eye. The Nexar warrior recoiled in pain and surprise, and Aaron pressed forward with a series of attacks that violated every principle of martial arts he had ever learned. He sacrificed position for aggression, abandoned defense for pure offense, made choices that hurt himself as much as his opponent. It was beautiful chaos, and Core couldn't process it. The Nexar's strategic mind kept trying to find the pattern, the underlying logic, but there was none. Aaron was fighting on pure instinct, making decisions that even he didn't fully understand. When Core finally fell, the Nexar warrior looked more confused than hurt. He had lost to an opponent who had broken every rule of combat, who had won by being willing to lose in ways Core had never anticipated. 3 victories. The arena was in chaos now. Aliens were arguing with each other, some insisting this was impossible, others demanding the matches be stopped. The council representatives looked pale, or whatever the equivalent was for their various species. Kalth stood motionless, his hands gripping the railing so hard the metal began to bend. Jake allowed himself a small smile. His champions were doing the impossible, and they were doing it by being exactly what made humans dangerous: unpredictable, adaptable, and absolutely unwilling to fight by anyone else's rules. But as he watched Kalth's face, Jake felt a cold sensation in his stomach. They were winning, yes, but winning might be more dangerous than losing. The council was afraid, and fear made people do terrible things. Maya stepped onto the arena floor for the 4th match, and Jake noticed something that made his blood run cold. The Nexar warrior waiting for her wore armor he had not seen before, covered in symbols that glowed with internal light. This was not one of the original 5 champions. The council had changed the rules. Kalth's voice echoed through the arena, harder now with an edge of desperation. The 4th match will be against Commander Zyre of the Apex Guard. Humanity has proven more capable than anticipated. Therefore, we are adjusting the challenge to appropriate difficulty. Jake shot to his feet. That's not the agreement. You said 5 matches against the Nexar. The agreement, Kalth said coldly, was that you would face our champions. Commander Zyre is our finest champion. Or do you wish to forfeit? Maya looked up at Jake and shook her head slightly. Her message was clear. They had come too far to back down now. The match began, and immediately everyone could see the difference. Zyre moved like liquid death, faster than anything they had seen before. Maya barely had time to raise her guard before the Apex Guard warrior was upon her, striking with precision that seemed to violate physics. Maya went down hard, blood streaming from her nose. The crowd roared, relieved to finally see a human defeated. But then Maya stood up and the real fight began. Maya tasted blood in her mouth as she rolled away from Zyre's next attack. The Apex Guard warrior was everything the previous Nexar champions were not: fast, precise, and utterly overwhelming. The enhancements in Zyre's body allowed movements that organic beings should not be capable of. When Zyre struck, it was like being hit by a speeding vehicle wrapped in a knife. The first 5 minutes were brutal. Maya took hit after hit, barely able to defend, completely unable to counterattack. Her ribs screamed with pain. Her vision blurred from repeated impacts to her head. The crowd was on their feet now, cheering for Zyre, celebrating what they saw as the restoration of proper order. Jake watched in horror as his officer was systematically beaten down. Chris had moved to the edge of the observation box, his hands gripping the barrier so hard his knuckles were white. Aaron was frantically reviewing data on his tablet, searching for some weakness in Zyre's pattern. Lisa and Danny stood silent, knowing they might be next. Maya went down again, harder this time. She lay on the arena floor, breathing in ragged gasps, blood pooling beneath her. Zaire stood over her, waiting for her to yield. The referee moved closer, ready to call the match. But Maya's hand moved. She pushed herself up on trembling arms, got one knee under her, then stood. The cheering faltered. Why was the human still fighting? She had clearly lost. There was no path to victory. Any rational being would yield. Zaire attacked again, and this time Maya didn't try to defend or dodge. She took the hit, absorbing the impact, and used the moment of contact to study her opponent. The attack sent her sliding across the arena floor, leaving a streak of blood, but her eyes never left Zaire. She stood again. Zaire attacked. Maya studied. She fell. She rose. Again and again, the pattern repeated. The crowd's cheering turned to confused silence. What was the human doing? Why wouldn't she quit? Aaron suddenly looked up from his tablet, his eyes wide. "She's counting," he whispered. Jake looked at him. "What?" "Watch Zaire's enhancements." The glow pulses. Maya's measuring the timing. Aaron's fingers flew across his tablet. The enhancements run on some kind of energy cycle. There has to be a recharge period, even if it's just for a fraction of a second. Chris leaned forward. "Can you measure it?" "I'm trying, but the interval is so small I can barely detect it." Aaron squinted at his screen. 47 seconds between pulses. The enhancement system goes dormant for maybe a tenth of a second while it recharges. "That's not enough time to exploit," Lisa said. Jake watched Maya, watched how she was timing her recoveries, how she was measuring Zaire's attacks. It is if you're desperate enough and willing to take punishment to find it. Maya stood for what must have been the 20th time. Blood covered her face. One eye was swollen shut. Her left arm hung at an awkward angle, possibly broken, but she was still standing, still watching, still learning. Zaire came at her again, and this time something was different. Maya moved a fraction of a second earlier than before, and her counterstrike landed. It should have been impossible. Zaire's enhancements should have allowed an easy dodge. But for a tenth of a second, the enhancements were offline, recharging, and Maya's fist connected with Zaire's face. The Apex Guard warrior stumbled backward, more from surprise than damage. Maya pressed forward, her movements now timed to that invisible rhythm only she had learned to feel. Every 47 seconds she attacked. Every other moment she defended and waited. The fight became a war of attrition. Zaire was still faster, still stronger, but Maya had found the pattern. She wasn't trying to win quickly. She was trying to survive long enough for Zaire's enhanced stamina to fail, for the energy systems to drain, for the impossible advantage to slowly erode. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Zaire's attacks, while still devastating, came slightly slower. The enhancement glow that covered the warrior's armor began to flicker. Maya, despite her injuries, despite the pain that must have been overwhelming, kept fighting. At the 40-minute mark, Zaire made a mistake. The enhancement cycle stuttered, taking 2 full seconds to recharge instead of a tenth. Maya didn't hesitate. She put everything she had left into a single strike, aimed at the neural cluster Aaron had marked on every species diagram. Zaire's armor absorbed most of the impact, but enough force got through. The Apex Guard warrior fell. The arena exploded into chaos. Aliens were shouting, some in celebration, most in shock and fear. The council representatives were on their feet, arguing amongst themselves. Kalth stood frozen, staring at the impossible sight of his finest warrior, defeated by a human who should have been destroyed in the first minute. Medical personnel rushed onto the arena floor, tending to both fighters. Maya collapsed as soon as the match was called, her body finally giving up now that the fight was over. Jake wanted to run to her, but the arena protocols kept him locked in the observation area. The council called for an emergency recess. This time it lasted 2 hours. Jake paced the observation box like a caged animal. His champions sat together, quiet and contemplative. Danny, who would face the final match, stared at his hands. He was the youngest, the least experienced, and now he carried the weight of humanity's future on his shoulders. When the council finally returned, Calth's announcement sent a chill through every human in the station. The challenge has proven more difficult than anticipated. Commander Zaire's defeat, while honorable, demonstrates that humanity possesses capabilities we did not fully understand. Therefore, I will personally face the final human champion. This is my right as Supreme Commander of the Council's military forces. Jake felt his blood turn to ice. Calth was not just another warrior. He was a legend in the galaxy, a being who had lived for 6 centuries and commanded the loyalty of trillions. Danny would be facing someone who had fought in wars before humanity had invented agriculture. Chris stood up. "Captain, we should stop this. It's suicide." "We can't stop it," Maya said weakly from the medical station where she was being treated. "If we forfeit now, we lose everything we've gained. We're 4 victories up. We just need 1 more. Danny finally spoke, his voice quiet but steady. "I'll fight." Jake looked at the young corporal. Danny was 23 years old, had been in the military for 5 years, and had survived 3 separate incidents that should have killed him, through what his superiors called dumb luck and pure stubbornness. He was not the strongest or the fastest or the smartest, but he had one quality that Jake had recognized immediately. Danny Hughes did not quit. Ever. The recess ended, and Danny walked onto the arena floor. Calth descended from the council platform, removing the ceremonial robes to reveal armor underneath that looked like it was made from solidified starlight. The Supreme Commander carried no weapons. He didn't need them. They stood facing each other, the young human and the ancient alien warrior. The arena fell silent. Even the most vocal alien spectators seemed to sense that this match was different. This was about more than just a challenge. This was about the Council's very foundations, about the power structure that had maintained galactic order for 10,000 years. The referee gave the signal, and Calth moved. Danny had no time to think, no time to plan. He simply reacted, throwing himself to the side as the space where he had been standing exploded from the force of Calth's strike. The Supreme Commander moved with terrifying speed, each attack powerful enough to shatter stone. Danny went down in the first 30 seconds, then the second 30 seconds, then again and again. Each time, Calth's attacks were precisely calibrated to hurt without causing permanent damage. This was not a warrior trying to win quickly. This was a master teaching a lesson, demonstrating the vast gulf between human capability and true galactic power. 3 minutes in, Danny had been knocked down 8 times. His nose was broken, blood streaming down his face. His body was covered in bruises. He could barely stand, but he stood anyway. Calth paused, studying the human. "Why do you continue? You cannot win. Your body is breaking. Your species will still have achieved 4 victories, which is more than any species in history. Yield with honor." Danny spit blood onto the arena floor. "No. You are brave, but foolish. I have fought for 600 years. I have ended rebellions, conquered worlds, defeated champions from every corner of the galaxy. You are a child playing at war." Danny steadied himself, raised his fists despite the pain. "Then I guess this child isn't done playing yet." Something flickered in Calth's eyes, respect perhaps, or pity. The Supreme Commander attacked again, and Danny went down for the 9th time. He rose. 10th time. He rose. 20th time. He rose. The crowd watched in confused silence. This was not combat anymore. This was something else, something they had no word for. The human had no chance of winning, yet he refused to accept defeat. He kept getting up, kept fighting, kept trying. Jake watched from the observation box, his heart breaking. Danny was losing, being systematically destroyed, but the young corporal would not quit. It was the most human thing Jake had ever seen, and it was beautiful and terrible in equal measure. The match continued, minute after endless minute, and slowly something began to change. 30 minutes had passed since the match began. Danny had been knocked down so many times that the crowd had stopped counting. His body should have given up long ago. Every medical indicator suggested he should be unconscious, possibly dead. Yet he kept standing, kept moving, kept fighting. Kalth's attacks had not lessened in power, but something in the Supreme Commander's demeanor had changed. He no longer looked confident or pitying. He looked confused, perhaps even concerned. This should have ended in the first 5 minutes. Instead, the human child was still fighting. Danny had stopped trying to win in any conventional sense. He no longer attempted powerful strikes or clever techniques. Instead, he focused entirely on survival. Every movement was about lasting 1 more second. Every dodge was about making Kalth work slightly harder. Every fall was positioned to buy a few moments of recovery time. He used the arena environment, forcing Kalth to chase him, making the ancient warrior expend energy. When he couldn't dodge, he rolled with the impacts to minimize damage. When he couldn't roll, he protected vital areas. He fought like a cornered animal, using every trick and every desperate gambit a human mind could conceive. 45 minutes. Danny's right leg was barely supporting his weight. His vision kept blurring. He could taste blood with every breath, but his eyes never lost focus, never stopped tracking Kalth's movements, never stopped searching for any tiny advantage. Kalth spoke again, and for the first time, there was something other than confidence in his voice. "You cannot win. Why do you persist?" Danny's response came through broken lips. "Because that's what humans do. We don't know how to quit. That is not strength. That is madness." "Maybe," Danny gasped. "To you it looks the same." The Supreme Commander attacked again, a strike meant to finally end this absurd display. But Danny had learned Kalth's patterns through sheer repetition and pain. He moved a fraction of a second earlier than before, and the strike that should have connected fully only grazed him. It still sent him sprawling, but he had survived another attack. In the observation box, Aaron was frantically analyzing data. "Captain, look at this. Kalth's attack speed is decreasing. It's minimal, maybe 5%, but it's measurable." "Is he getting tired?" Chris asked. "Kalth is 600 years old and cybernetically enhanced. I don't think he can get tired in any normal sense," Aaron said. "But the enhancements require energy, and Danny is making him work for every strike. He's draining Kalth's reserves." Lisa shook her head in disbelief. "Danny's not trying to beat him through skill. He's trying to outlast him." "That's impossible," Chris said. "Kalth has technological advantages, centuries of experience, and Danny is already half dead." Jake watched the young corporal struggle to his feet once more. Danny doesn't care about impossible. He cares about the next second, the next breath, the next moment. And every moment he survives is a moment Kalth has to burn energy he expected to save. An hour into the match, something remarkable happened. Kalth landed a strike that should have ended the fight. Danny went down and stayed down for a full 10 seconds. The referee moved forward to call the match. But then Danny's hand moved. He pushed himself up on arms that shook with exhaustion, rose to one knee, then stood. The crowd, which had been silent for the past 20 minutes, erupted in confused noise. Aliens were arguing with each other, trying to understand what they were witnessing. This violated every principle of combat they knew. The human had no path to victory, yet refused to accept defeat. It was illogical, impossible, and absolutely terrifying. Kalth stood perfectly still, watching Danny stand. The Supreme Commander had fought warriors from 1,000 species across 6 centuries. He had faced opponents stronger, faster, more skilled, but he had never fought anyone like this. The human's refusal to quit was not bravery or stupidity. It was something fundamental to the species, something that transcended logic and reason. The match continued. 70 minutes. 80. Danny had long ago stopped looking like a trained fighter. He moved like a wounded animal now, all instinct and desperation. But those movements were effective in ways no training could teach. He found angles that formal martial arts would never consider. He exploited moments that existed only because he was willing to take damage that would kill most beings. And Kalth, for the first time in his 600 years, felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Fatigue. Not physical exhaustion. His enhancements prevented that. But a deep weariness that came from fighting an opponent who refused to follow any rules, including the basic rule that living beings eventually had limits. At 90 minutes, Kalth made his first genuine mistake. He overextended on an attack, committing slightly more force than necessary. Danny, operating on pure instinct now, moved inside the strike and landed a blow to Kalth's midsection. It was not a powerful strike. Danny no longer had that kind of strength, but it connected cleanly. Kalth stumbled backward, more from surprise than damage. The crowd gasped. In 600 years, in thousands of battles, The Supreme Commander had rarely been forced backward. And now a human child barely standing had done it. Something changed in Kalth's eyes. The confusion became concern, and the concern became something darker, fear. Not fear of losing the match, but fear of what this human represented. If one young human, untrained by galactic standards, could force him to work this hard, what would humanity become with access to galactic technology? What would they be capable of in 100 years? 1,000. Kalth attacked with renewed intensity, no longer fighting to teach a lesson, but fighting to end a threat. Danny went down hard, the impact leaving a crater in the arena floor. This time he did not move for 15 seconds, 20, 30. The referee raised his hand to call the match. The crowd began to relax. Finally it was over. The human had fought bravely but ultimately failed, as they all knew he would. Then Danny's eyes opened. He rolled onto his side, coughed blood, and began the agonizing process of standing once more. The referee froze, hand still raised. The crowd's relief turned back to horror. "Stay down," Kalth said, and there was an edge of desperation in his voice. "You have proven your species' courage. Stay down with honor." Danny got one foot under him, then the other. He swayed like a tree in a storm, but remained upright. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper, but in the silent arena everyone heard it. "We didn't come this far to quit now." Kalth attacked again, putting everything into a final strike meant to end this nightmare. But the Supreme Commander's desperation made him sloppy, made him commit in ways he had not committed in centuries. Danny saw the opening, the tiny gap in Kalth's perfect technique that only existed because the ancient warrior wanted this over. Danny moved, not with any formal technique, but with the pure instinct of someone who had spent 90 minutes learning one opponent, through nothing but pain and survival. His fist, driven by the last reserves of strength in his battered body, connected with the neural cluster on Kalth's neck. The strike had no power behind it. By any objective measure, it should not have been effective, but it landed perfectly, in exactly the right spot with exactly the right angle. Kalth's enhanced physiology had one weakness, a vulnerability that existed in the biology of his species no matter how much technology was layered on top. And Danny, through sheer desperate luck and accumulated pain-taught knowledge, had found it. The Supreme Commander of the Galactic Council's military forces fell. For a long moment, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Then the arena exploded into chaos. Aliens were screaming, running, shouting. The council representatives stood in shock, unable to process what they had witnessed. The impossible had happened. The Nexar had been defeated. The Apex Guard had been defeated. And now Kalth himself, the symbol of council military supremacy, lay unconscious on the arena floor. Danny collapsed beside him, finally allowing his body to surrender to unconsciousness. Medical teams rushed onto the floor, tending to both fighters. In the observation box, Jake's crew stood in stunned silence. Chris spoke first, his voice filled with awe and horror. "We won. We actually won." "No," Jake said quietly, watching the alien dignitaries flee the observation areas, watching the panic spread through the station. "We've just done something much more dangerous than losing. We've made them afraid." The celebration that should have followed never came. Instead, the council called for an immediate private session, excluding all humans. The Frontier crew was escorted back to their ship and told to wait for the official induction ceremony. As Jake watched the council building where his fate was being decided, he felt the cold certainty that winning the challenge might have been the worst thing humanity could have done. They had proven themselves capable of defeating the galaxy's finest warriors, and that proof would have consequences far beyond anything he had imagined. The council chamber was sealed. No human eyes witnessed what happened in those 6 hours while the galaxy's leaders debated behind closed doors. But across Terminus Station, the mood had shifted from celebration to unease. Alien species that had gathered to watch humanity's expected failure now hurried to depart, their governments recalling them with urgent messages. On the frontier, Jake's crew waited. Maya was recovering in medical bay, her injuries extensive but not permanent. Danny remained unconscious, his body finally demanding the rest it had been denied during that brutal 90-minute battle. The medical scanners showed he would survive, though the doctor who examined him said it was a miracle his body had held together as long as it did. Chris paced the bridge, unable to settle. Aaron reviewed footage of the matches. analyzing every moment with the obsessive attention to detail that made him such a good scientist. Lisa sat quietly, checking and rechecking her equipment, always preparing for whatever came next. When the council's message finally came, it was not what any of them expected. Instead of the formal induction ceremony, they received an invitation. Captain Jake Morrison and his entire crew were invited to Centralis Prime, the council's capital world, for what was described as a historic celebration. Humanity would be welcomed into the galactic community with full honors. The ceremony would take place in 3 days. Jake read the message twice, then called his senior staff to the conference room. Maya joined them via video link from medical, her face still swollen from Zaire's beating. Danny remained unconscious but stable. "Something's wrong," Jake said without preamble. "This message is too friendly, too accommodating." "Maybe they're sincere," Lisa suggested. "We won fairly. The ancient laws say we must be accepted." Aaron shook his head. "Captain Morrison is right. Look at the subtext of this message. They're not just inviting the negotiating team. They're inviting our entire crew. Every single person on the frontier. Standard protocol for an induction ceremony?" Chris asked. "Maybe," Aaron said. "Or maybe they want all the humans in one place." The conference room fell silent. Maya's voice came through the speaker, tight with pain and concern. "Captain, I recommend we decline. Send a small delegation, keep most of the crew on the ship." Jake considered it. But declining might be seen as an insult, might give the council an excuse to revoke their victory. They had come this far, survived the impossible challenge. Could they really turn back now? "We'll go," he decided. "But we go cautiously, full security protocols, and we leave a message with Earth Command explaining our concerns. If anything happens to us, they'll know." The next 3 days passed intense preparation. The Frontier's crew noticed something odd. Alien ships that had been friendly or at least neutral now avoided them. Docking requests were delayed. Supplies they had ordered went unfilled. It was as if the entire station had decided the humans were contagious. On the day of departure, Jake recorded a message to Earth. He detailed everything that had happened. From first contact to the challenge to their strange reception, he ended with a simple statement. "If you don't hear from us within 1 week, assume the worst. Do not trust the council. Prepare for the possibility that we were wrong to seek contact." The Frontier departed Terminus Station on schedule, following the navigation coordinates provided by the council. The journey to Centralis Prime would take 2 days at faster-than-light speed. Jake spent most of that time reviewing every piece of information they had gathered about the council, looking for clues about what might be waiting for them. On the second day, Danny finally woke up. He was weak, barely able to walk, but conscious and alert. When Jake told him they were heading to the council's capital world for the induction ceremony, Danny's reaction was immediate. "It's a trap, sir. You think so?" "I know so," Danny said, wincing as he shifted in the medical bed. "I saw Calth's eyes before I passed out." He wasn't defeated. He was terrified, and terrified people do terrible things. Jake had been thinking the same thing, but hearing it from Danny made it real. "We're committed now. We're already in transit. Then we prepare for the worst and hope for the best," Danny said. "It's the only thing we can do." The Frontier dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the designated coordinates, and Centralis Prime appeared before them. The planet was beautiful, covered in glittering cities that stretched across continents. Hundreds of ships orbited the world, representing every species in the council. "We're receiving docking instructions," Maya reported from her station. She had insisted on returning to duty despite her injuries. "They're directing us to an orbital platform. Standard diplomatic protocol." The Frontier followed the instructions, docking at the massive platform without incident. A delegation was waiting for them, led by a species Jake had not seen before. They were tall and graceful, with translucent skin that showed the light moving through their bodies. "Captain Morrison," the delegation leader spoke in perfect English. "I am Ambassador Lyra. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome you and your crew to Centralis Prime. The ceremony will take place tomorrow at the Grand Assembly Hall. Tonight, we have prepared quarters for all of you. Please allow us to escort you." Everything seemed perfect, too perfect. The quarters were luxurious, the food was excellent, and the alien hosts were unfailingly polite. Jake's crew was split into different sections of the facility, ostensibly to give them more room and privacy. But it also meant they were separated, isolated from each other. Jake lay awake that night in quarters that felt more like a prison cell despite their luxury. Through the window he could see Centralis Prime rotating below, beautiful and alien and wrong. Every instinct screamed that something terrible was about to happen. At Oro 300 station time, the Frontier sent an automated distress signal. It lasted exactly 3 seconds before being cut off. The signal never reached Earth. The Frontier's last transmission simply vanished into the void, as if the ship had never existed. When morning came, Jake and his crew were gone. The quarters were empty, cleaned as if no one had ever occupied them. The Frontier had departed its docking port, according to station records, heading back toward human space. But no one saw it leave. No one recorded its departure. The ship, and everyone on it, had simply vanished. The Galactic Council released a statement expressing deep regret over the tragic loss of the human vessel Frontier. Preliminary investigations suggested a catastrophic failure of the faster-than-light drive, a terrible accident that destroyed the ship instantly, leaving no survivors and no debris. The Council offered condolences to humanity and promised a full investigation. On Earth, the message was received with grief and suspicion. The scientists who had built the Frontier's drive system insisted that such a failure was impossible. The drive had redundancies upon redundancies, fail-safes that should have prevented any catastrophic malfunction. And even if something had gone wrong, there would have been some warning, some debris, some evidence. But the galaxy was vast and Earth was far away, and the Council controlled all the communication networks. The official story became the accepted story. The Frontier and its brave crew had been lost in a tragic accident. Humanity mourned their heroes and retreated once more to their solar system. The dream of joining the galactic community shattered along with their first starship. Months passed. Then, on a quiet Tuesday night, Earth's deep space monitoring network detected something unusual. A signal, faint and damaged, coming from the coordinates where the Frontier had supposedly been destroyed. The signal was heavily encrypted, using codes that only the Frontier's crew would know. It took 3 days to fully decode the message. When it was finally decrypted, it contained just 5 words and a set of coordinates. They feared us. We won. The message was from Maya Collins. The coordinates pointed to a location deep in uncharted space, far from any Council territory. The message had been recorded weeks after the Frontier's supposed destruction and had traveled through multiple relay points before reaching Earth, hidden in commercial traffic to avoid Council detection. The implications were staggering. The Frontier had not been destroyed. The crew had not died in an accident. They had been taken, hidden, removed from the equation because the Council feared what humanity represented, and at least some of them had survived long enough to send a message. Earth's governments convened an emergency session. The debate was fierce and lasted for days. Some argued for immediate military action. Others counseled patience and preparation. A few suggested that one ship and its crew were not worth starting a galactic war over. But the decision, when it finally came, was unanimous. Humanity would not forget. Humanity would not forgive. And humanity would prepare. The next 50 years saw the greatest military expansion in human history, conducted in complete secrecy. Ships were built in the outer solar system, far from prying eyes. Weapons were developed based on the weaknesses humanity had observed in alien species during those 5 matches. Soldiers were trained specifically to fight opponents with superior technology, to exploit the one advantage humans had proven they possessed, the ability to adapt, to improvise, and to absolutely refuse to quit. The Galactic Council, satisfied that the human problem had been solved, returned to their normal operations. They believed the dangerous species,